Good evening, everyone. I am Harshita, and it is my pleasure to welcome you all to the Prem Bhatia Journalism Awards and Memorial Lecture 2026. This is an evening dedicated to journalism, to recognizing excellence, acknowledging the work of journalists, and reflecting on the role of the press in our democracy. It is also an evening to remember and honor the legacy of Shri Prem Bhatia, whose contribution to Indian journalism continues to inspire generations of journalists. We are privileged to have with us distinguished members of the media fraternity, our awardees, speakers, and our guests. To formally welcome us this evening, I invite Mr. Raghavan Srinivasan, General Secretary, Editors Guild of India, to deliver the welcome address. So, may I invite you to the stage?
Distinguished guests, our chief guest, Shri Kapil Sibal ji, President of the Editors Guild of India, Sanjay Kapoor, our honorable jury chairs, Rami, Chhabra and Smita Gupta ji, members of the Prem Bhatia family, friends. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to today's function, which is both a celebration and an evaluation of the role that we as journalists play in our society today. The evening comprises of two separate but connected parts. There are the Prem Bhatia Memorial Awards, which recognize excellence in journalism in two very important categories: political journalism and environmental journalism. And then we have the Prem Bhatia Memorial Lecture, delivered every year by a public figure of note on an issue which concerns us all. But essentially, both of them look at and honor one thing, which is the larger public purpose of journalism. We are gathered at a moment when journalism is being tested in many ways, by speed over substance, noise over knowledge, and pressure over independence. This is precisely why such evenings matter. They remind us that journalism is not merely the business of reporting events. At its very best, journalism is a public service, a disciplined search for facts. I will not use the word truth, because truth is can mean different things for different people, but certainly facts are sacred to journalists. And there is a process, there is a discipline, and there is a rigor involved in good journalism, which transcends this and takes this search for facts onto a larger impact on society as a whole. Good journalism is also a scrutiny of power, and it's a means by which citizens, the public that we as journalists serve, can understand the forces which are shaping their lives. This is the fundamental role of journalism, that we can manage to sort of go behind the scenes a little bit, connect the dots, and show the people who's doing what and to whom. Shri Prem Bhatia embodied that ideal. As an eminent editor, a political journalist of note, a former editor of the Tribune, Shri Bhatia was widely respected for his incisive reporting, intellectual range and breadth, independence of voice, and an unfaltering commitment to objectivity. His career moved across journalism and public life, but the central thread remained the same: a belief that public debate must be informed, rigorous, and fearless. The values associated with his name are neither ornamental nor abstract. They ask of journalists that they approach authority without servility, public opinion without cynicism, and facts without distortion. They require fairness, not as a false equivalence, but as fidelity to evidence, objectivity, not as detachment from human suffering, but in honesty in reporting it, and independence, not in the sense of isolation, of sitting in an ivory tower, but as freedom from political, commercial, and ideological capture. The Prem Bhatia Memorial Trust instituted these awards and the accompanying lecture back in 1995 to preserve precisely this legacy. The awards for excellence in political journalism and environmental journalism recognize work that brings depth, rigor, and public consequence to two areas central to our democratic future, and indeed our future as a nation. As somebody remarked to me the other day, we must first exist as a people, as a planet, before we can discuss the future. So, political journalism matters because democracy depends on citizens knowing how power is exercised in legislatures, in courts, governments, political parties, and public institutions. Environmental journalism matters because climate change, ecological decline, pollution, displacement, and the use of natural resources are no longer distant subjects. They are things that impact us and shape our lives every day. These are questions of livelihood, health, inequality, and most importantly, intergenerational justice, because what we consume today does not exist for the generation which is to follow. We recognize this work today because it does not look away. These stories ask difficult questions, they followed the evidence, they gave voice to those who may otherwise remain unseen or unheard. And most importantly, these stories strengthen the public's right to know. The Editors Guild of India is proud to carry forward this legacy. We were founded in 1978 as an independent, self-funded organization of senior media professionals. We have two objectives: to protect press freedom and to raise the standard of editorial leadership. These are the only two things we look at. Over the years, the Guild has spoken out on threats to media freedom, freedom of speech. It has examined complaints against institutions and public figures, but also against the media itself. And it has undertaken fact-finding work, advanced ethical standards. We recently released an updated code of ethics for the profession last year, something which we hope that the industry will take forward. This work is essential because editorial freedom and editorial responsibility are not separable. A free press cannot endure without credibility, and credibility cannot exist without accuracy, fairness, transparency, and the courage to correct oneself when one errs, which is quite often in the media. The Guild's commitment, therefore, is both to freedom of press and the professional standards that make that freedom meaningful to the public. In 2024, the Prem Bhatia Memorial Trust entrusted the corpus to the Editors Guild of India, and since 2025, the Guild has administered these awards. It's a proud privilege for us, and we are extremely grateful to the Bhatia family and the trust for considering the Editors Guild worthy of such a responsibility. We receive that responsibility with humility and resolve to carry this work forward. This evening is also an invitation to reflect. The memorial lecture, which was going to be the highlight of this evening, is in a tradition of serious public conversation, one that refuses easy answers and recognizes that health of a democracy rests on informed disagreement, constitutional values, and above all, the unfettered exchange of ideas. On behalf of the Editors Guild of India, I warmly welcome all of you. I congratulate the awardees, and I thank the Prem Bhatia Memorial Trust once again for this responsibility. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Now we move to the next part of the evening. We were hoping to have Mr. Shyam Bhatia with us in person this evening. However, sorry. Okay. So we had a recorded. Okay. So we have a recorded address for the occasion. May I request you all to listen to his message?
Good evening, friends. The erstwhile Prem Bhatia Memorial Trust and the family of the late Mr. Prem Bhatia would at the outset like to say how happy they are to have been able to provide resources and collaborate with the Editors Guild of India to enable this landmark event to take place this evening. Thanks to the efforts of the Editors Guild, the Prem Bhatia Lecture and Awards will continue to contribute to Mr. Bhatia's legacy of nurturing and promoting independent journalism in this country. Mr. Bhatia was a legend of his times, a doyen in an era of outstanding journalism. He served as editor of several newspapers and also as a diplomat. But his passion was print journalism, and the cause closest to his heart was independent, accurate, and objective reporting. His contribution to journalism in India is perhaps best summed up in the citation given to him for the B.D. Goenka Award for Excellence in Journalism, which was conferred on him in 1985. It says, and I quote, "In times which try men's souls, and in a state consumed by hatred and fanaticism, you strove to awake the conscience of the people. Never did your vision dim, your objectivity fail, or your dedication to the truth falter. Despite conflicting pulls and pressures, despite threats of violence and worse, you did your duty unflinchingly as a journalist, armed with an iron will and inflexible resolve, with intellectual integrity and indomitable courage." And I think to this, not a word needs to be added. Once again, our thanks to the Editors Guild for making continuation of this event possible, and we all hope that in its small way, it can continue to contribute to the cause of independent journalism that was so close to Mr. Bhatia's heart. A very good evening to you all, and best wishes.
Thank you. Now I'd invite Mr. Bhatia to address the gathering, please. Sir.
Thank you, friends. I'm Shyam Bhatia. I'm Anand's younger son, and also, some people say, a journalist. I remember my father's times very clearly. It was a very different era, much smaller world. Politicians were accessible in those days. The journalists were fewer, and it was mostly print journalism that excited the world. I mean, today's era of social journalism, of social outlets, would have been completely strange and different to my late father's time. But I think he'd be excited to know that so many of us in the media world are still dedicated and committed to the idea of freedom of the press and willing to challenge authority wherever and whenever it is necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. We now come to the first award of the evening, the Environmental Journalism Award. To introduce the award and read the citations, I invite Ms. Rami Chhabra, Jury Chair, to join us. Ma'am, may I please request you to take the stage?
Shri Kapil Sibal, Shri Sanjay Kapoor, Shri Raghavan Srinivasan, Shri Prem Bhatia, Smita, Gupta, friends, colleagues, and all distinguished guests. It is indeed a privilege for me to present to you today the two joint award winners for the Prem Bhatia Excellence in Environmental Journalism Award 2026. I do so on behalf of the jury comprising eminent journalists P. Sainath, Sudhata Magdhok, I think Sujata is here today, if she would stand up and be acknowledged, Devinder Sharma, yeah, thank you Sujata for all the work, and myself. But let me first briefly report. This year we received a record-breaking 72 entries with multiple attachments. The vast majority were in English, but a few in Hindi, Bengali, Malayalam, Kannada, with translations duly submitted. Entries came from across the country, from Ladakh to Kerala, Northeast to Maharashtra, Gujarat. The majority display painstaking research, buttressing keen observations and a depth of understanding of the subjects. Altogether, these reflect a fine maturing of environmental journalism in the country. We see many more independent journalists now able to roam far afield, manage logistical and financial support for their work and outlets across multiple media spaces and channels, from legacy to digital, print to video, even film. Given the excellence of so many of the entries and the range of subjects covered, it has been exceedingly difficult to select a single award winner. For the BMT Environment Award, which started in a very small way back in 2004, in order to encourage reporting on environment and development issues in the media, both the range of coverage and the huge response is heartwarming. While it is heartening to see this tremendous interest in environment issues, we however note with dismay that the majority of stories raise alarm about the extent of environmental destruction and the consequent biodiversity loss in the country. Whether it is the logging of forests, the dredging of the seas, or the mining of riverbeds. In many cases, these call for a review of policies and programs that put vulnerable species of flora and fauna at risk and or require massive displacement of people from their lands and homes. The problems posed by human-animal conflicts or conflicts between polluting industries and people living in their vicinity were the focus of many stories. Several reported the negative impact even of renewable energy projects on local populations and the financial viability of such schemes. A number of reports reflected considerable scientific expertise in grasping complex issues. We salute the courage and intellectual vigor with which many journalists reported such contentious stories, which, if I may say, are the real political journalism of today. It is, at the same time, constructive criticism that forewarns about problems that could fester further. The jury individually read and sifted through all entries, exchanged short lists, dialogued by mail and phone, and finally met in an hour-long Zoom meeting wherein the two separate entries were unanimously chosen for the award. And I'll name them: Pankaj, Sekhsaria, and Rohini, Krishnamurthy. Two equally powerful documentations, both reflecting extensive field research, rigorous fact marshalling, and analytical acuity. One singularly focused on a key geographical area, the other on a plurality of issues, both with tremendous national implications, both fearlessly speaking truth to power with clarity and courage. Thank you. You will hear more about each as I read their citations, but briefly, Sekhsaria's pioneering work spanning 5 years on the Government of India's 80,000 crore Great Nicobar Island ambitious Hong Kong aping infrastructure project on India's end island in the Indian Ocean is well known. But now he has dug deeper. I will not go into the further remarks because they will come into the citation. Rohini Krishnamurthy, on the other hand, covers a wide spectrum: data centers, agroforestry and carbon credits market, the impact of offshore sand mining on fisherfolk in Kerala, also positive portraits of game-changer solutions such as organic farming in Chhattisgarh's Dantewada district. And I'm skipping any comments there because they come under citation. The jury has also specially commended Anand Madhusudan Sadi and the language newspaper Kannada Prabha as an exemplar of the fine media activism through determined campaigning over 150 consecutive days that grew statewide awareness of polluting chemical factories, replacing the original textile industrial plan in Kadechur, and displacing thousands and turning the area into a toxic hell. Finally, if I may be permitted a moment's reminiscence before we move on to the citations. I was a starry-eyed 18-year-old when 70 years ago I first met Prem Bhatia, then the leading star of the leading English newspaper, The Statesman. I was lobbying to fill a vacancy that had arisen for a reporter in the newspaper in which I had already published several feature articles. The eminent journalist barely looked up from his writing as he virtually told me to get lost. First, take off those gold hoops from your ears, also that lipstick, if you want to work seriously. I don't want my reporters queuing to date you. I did not get the reporter's assignment. The bizarre excuse the Statesman offered: we once had a woman. It didn't work out. Those were not the days of sexist angst, which we would develop later, and I retreated. However, there is a positive postscript to share about Premji's regret for his earlier deplorable gender bias and subsequent evolution. Decades later, in 1980, when the Chameli Devi Awards were started, Prem Bhatia immediately nominated me, but by then I had already moved away from active journalism, and the award deservedly went to Neerja Chaudhary. Still later, in 1986, when I was laterally inducted as Additional Secretary in the GUI's Ministry of Health and Family Welfare, Premji hailed it in his Tribune column, admitting earlier misjudgment. Today, as I look around and see women cheering, participating in jury awards, a woman presiding over the Press Club today, earlier over the Press Council of India, and editors and leading women journalists spilling every which way, it is a matter of great pride to note the long way women have been able to come in the media, even if the media itself has gone for a spin. In the end, I would like to thank my jury colleagues, P. Sainath and Sujata Madok, for their sterling pro bono support to this work for a near decade, and to Dr. Davinder Sharma, who so willingly joined this year as a distinguished member of the jury. It is a matter of personal satisfaction that the Award for Environmental Journalism, instituted 2 decades ago, has come to enjoy a coveted stature in the media. My special thanks to Sanjay Kapoor, President Editors Guild, and Seema Mustafa, former President Editors Guild, for so disarmingly insisting that I chair the jury again this year, and to Rishabh Gaur, Editors Guild, for his unfailing assistance in ensuring that the technical process to carry out this sizable task went smoothly and swiftly. And now, to call out the award winners, for whom you are no doubt anxiously waiting. So I begin in no particular order. Pankaj Sekhsaria, would you like to come forward, please? And I read the citation. Please come up. Yes, sir. Yeah, just, yeah. Please come and stand here. Yeah, yeah. You, Pankaj Sekhsaria, are honored with the Prem Bhatia Memorial Award for Excellence in Environmental Journalism, 2026. The award comes to you for your campaigning, investigative body of work on the Great Nicobar Island and the likely impact of a mega infrastructure project on its primeval forests and ancient tribal Shompen community. We acknowledge the courage, scientific study, sensitivity, and sheer footwork it takes to report from a remote island on its treasure trove of biodiversity, its rare birds, animals, reptiles, sea creatures, coral reefs, plants, and forests that are threatened by modern development. You look beyond the grand, hyped-up vision of a massive infrastructure, the plans to spend a mind-boggling 80,000 crore rupees to build a container port, shipbuilding yard, power plant, airport, township, and high-end tourism facilities touted as the next Hong Kong, and see the devastation that lies beneath. You report on the arbitrary processes by which the local administration has given permissions for acquisition of 84 square kilometers of a tribal reserve, much of it forest land, without consultation with the affected Chompen people, who are a particularly vulnerable indigenous tribe, and also without adequate consideration of the consequences of the destruction and disruption of a millennium-old habitat home to rare species of wildlife, flora, and fauna. Noteworthy is your hard-hitting and forthright questioning of the lack of experience, competence, and integrity of many scientists, technical experts, and consultancy companies tasked with evaluating the loss of forests and biodiversity. You raise pertinent points about companies involved in the tendering process for tree felling and logging with no record of experience and expertise in such specialized project work. You have questioned the lack of transparency in stonewalling of RTI queries of the various ministries and other official bodies responsible for giving clearances for the project. Among your striking observations is the fact that no one knows exactly how many trees would have to be cut down, and your own estimate that given the scale of the enterprise and the technical difficulties in logging 130 square kilometers of ancient forests, the process could take up to 2 decades, upending project timelines and spiraling costs. The Editors Guild commends you, Pankaj Sekhsaria, on your intrepid investigations and journalistic vigor in a courageous battle to save India's indigenous people and our heritage of biodiversity. Thank you. Please, just will you stand with us for a few minutes, and I'll call Rohini. And then, may I ask Rohini Krishnamurthy to come to the stage, please? Lovely. Come this side. You, Rohini Krishnamurthy, are honored with the Prem Bhatia Memorial Award for Excellence in Environmental Journalism, 2026. Your critical investigations have covered a wide spectrum of contentious issues like mushrooming data centers, exploitation of forestry farmers in the carbon credit market, offshore sand mining impacting marine life, and local livelihoods. You also provide positive portraits of game-changer solutions, such as large-scale organic farming in Chhattisgarh's Dantewadi district, earlier only known as a Maoist stronghold. And on quite another front, the huge potential in energy-saving technologies with AC manufacture. The carbon credit story revealed your grasp of the complexities of the international carbon credit market. But going far beyond desk research, you travel to 3 far-flung states to expose how farmers growing commercial timber, such as eucalyptus, poplar, and mahogany, are being shortchanged for compensation by corporates profiting from the sale of the resultant carbon credits. You tackled head-on the risks posed by mushrooming data centers, for which India is fast emerging as an attractive international destination, given cheap labor and lower costs. Already 150 data centers are operational in Tier 1 cities. Many more are proposed to meet the demand generated by the AI boom. While this is being celebrated as a great employment opportunity, you have drawn attention to critical hidden issues. Significantly, the megatons of water required by the data center cooling towers, your legwork in Noida and Bengaluru data center clusters found not only lack of corporate disclosure and administrative transparency, but complete stonewalling by civic authorities to any query on this aspect, while local water scarcity was already very visible. You raise critical questions of water and electricity consumption by data centers located in overcrowded cities with already stressed public utilities. The fallout of the 2024 announcement by a Union Minister of Coals and Mines that for the first time, offshore mineral blocks would be auctioned in coastal areas of Gujarat the Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Kerala for extraction of lime mud, polymetallic nodules and sand is another issue you have brought into focus. Your report on the protests of fisher folk in Kollam, Kerala, where sand dredging threatens marine life and the livelihood of the fishing community, questions such policy choices. On a more positive note, you have showcased the success of an organic farming scheme in Dantavade, Chhattisgarh, where an estimated 10,000 farmers have switched to sustainable farming. Another story reports the government's push for energy-efficient devices, particularly ACs and agricultural water pumps, besides other energy-guzzling machinery that holds huge potential for the energy scene. The Editors Guild commends you, Rohini Krishnamurthy, for your grasp of a range of environmental issues, your courageous exposes of imminent environmental threats, as well as your solution-oriented stories from cities, fields, farms, and fishing villages. And now it's my privilege to invite both the award winners to say a few words for us. Would you like to come forward, Rohini? Okay.
I'd like to thank the jury for recognizing my work. I also want to thank Down to Earth, where I worked as a correspondent until late last year. At DT, I had the opportunity to travel to some of the most remote places, placing communities at the center of my reportage, supported by data. A special thanks to all the editors that I worked with, and also express my gratitude to the communities that have trusted me with their stories. I'm an independent journalist now, and the journey ahead will be challenging given the lack of institutional support and the current political climate. But watching some of the work by independent journalists and publishers gives me hope. So I am aware of the responsibility that this award brings. And I should continue doing good work. I cannot be taking my job for granted. And I should continue holding governments and businesses accountable. Thank you.
Thank you. Bless you. Thank you.
Good evening. I have a slightly longer set of comments to make with the permission. Not very long, but I just thought I should because it's an opportunity. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. I was just thinking, if you were to pick up a compass and put Delhi at the center and draw a circle around, there is perhaps nothing further in this country from the island of Great Nicobar. If you use the same compass to draw perhaps a circle of just a half a kilometer radius from where we are sitting here in IIC, there are perhaps more people here than in the entire island of Great Nicobar, which is just 7,000 people. Now, these huge distance and these small numbers, given that we sit here today at the center of power and decision making, is the classic case of actually being out of mind because it is out of sight. And I say this even as I stand here awarded, for which I'm very proud and grateful, and thank you so much. I must say that this cannot be mine alone, because it's not possible to do this work that I've been commended for without the support of a whole set of people, beginning of course with my family, my parents, my wife, my son, my brother who's here with me today. I would like to very importantly acknowledge, like Ramiji mentioned, the members of the Great Nicobar community and the Great Nicobar Tribal Council that have shown great courage and fortitude in raising questions about this massive project. It's a small community of 1,000 people. This is the second community in the islands in addition to the Champagne, which is the PVTG. And these people have been displaced once in the tsunami and the earthquake of 2004. this project, if it goes ahead, is their second displacement. And it's a permanent displacement because the lands that they want to go back to when they were impacted by the tsunami will be taken over with the project. And these people will be internally displaced forever because there is no going back. So in a small place far away from the centers of power with limited access to resources, to kind of things that we take for granted, it takes a particular kind of courage to be able to stand up. It's a small place, you're under the thumb of the administration, everything is surveyed, everything is known. And I think we need to deeply acknowledge that they're standing up. We need to support and we need to amplify their voices because it's really their fight. A good story, a good investigation doesn't mean anything otherwise. There's a second set of smaller people I would like to acknowledge and thank, which are closer home, researchers, independent scientists, and I say independent scientists, government officers, journalists, and RTI activists who have been at the heart of doing the work that I've been part of. Many of them have to remain invisible, as you will understand why. They are vulnerable, they work in difficult situations, and I hope there'll be a day soon when they can publicly take their positions and we can acknowledge them because they work in very difficult conditions. And finally, I would like to thank the media. I've only been an outside part of it for 30 years now as a freelancer, but I'm not part of the beast. And maybe for that reason, I continue to have a great amount of faith and trust in what the media can do. And I think there's no better illustration than the fact that my application was supported or was based on work in 3 media outlets, many others, but this time the Scroll. I'd like to thank the editor Naresh for his constant support. For the Hindu and the editor Suresh Nambat, who's constantly published stories. We did the first story 5 years ago in March of 2021 when the project was announced. And most importantly, perhaps, Frontline and Vaishnav Roy, who has been the biggest support for her courage, for all the support that she's done. Over the last 3 years, they did 2 special cover packages on the Great Nicobar project. A year and a half ago, we did a book called The Great Nicobar Betrayal, which was the first book that Frontline did. So I'm great gratitude to all of them. And there's one final thing I must say, and Ramiji mentioned this, is the failure of our scientific institutions. And I say that with great responsibility. In evidence after evidence after evidence that we have put together, we see, and in acts of omission and commission, in the EI reports and assessments, in submissions in meetings where the project is discussed or clearances are granted, in submissions before the judiciary, in the high courts, before the NGT. And I say this with great sadness but responsibility. There is collusion, there is complicity, and there is capitulation. And then there is silence. There's very few in the scientific community who have spoken. And the science community, which is a final arbiter of truth, we wear the robes of truth and science. And if we become the purveyors of falsehood, then I think there's no space to go. And I think that really is the story where the Great Nicobar project is concerned. And finally, this recognition, more than anything else, for me is a reaffirmation that we today as a collective, and all of us here, the guild, the jury, and the audience, that we understand and appreciate the importance, the fragility, and the uniqueness of a place like Great Nicobar and many other places of this country, of this planet, that are fragile, important, and beautiful in their own unique ways. And it is affirmation that we have not forgotten and that we will not forget. And for that, I'm deeply grateful, thankful to the guild, to the jury. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And with this, I now cede the space to political journalism.
Thank you, ma'am, and congratulations once again to both our awardees. We now move to the Political Journalism Award. To introduce the award and read the citation, I invite Ms. Smita Gupta, jury member, to join us. Ma'am, please.
Mr. Sibal, Mr. Srinivasan, Mr. Kapoor, Mr. Bhatia, and Mrs. Chhabra, and everyone who has come here this evening, a very warm welcome. I speak today on behalf of the jury that selected the winner of the Prem Bhatia Award for Excellence in Political Journalism for the year 2026. Unfortunately, my fellow jurors, Seema Mustafa, a former president of the Editors Guild of India, who headed the jury, and R. Rajgopal, the former editor of The Telegraph, have not been able to make it this evening. So I speak for them when I say that the process of selecting this year's winner, though arduous, was an extremely pleasant, enlightening, and rewarding experience for all three of us. Before I announce the name of the winner and read out the citation, I would like to explain the process through which we arrived at the final name. Seema, Raja, and I live in 3 different cities, and so the discussions were all done on Zoom, spread over 3 weeks in July. At the outset, we divided up the 45 entries into 3 lots with the objective of each selecting the 5 best and citing our reasons for doing so. For the next round, we looked at the 15 entries that made the first shortlist separately, selecting 3 each. Just as we were readying ourselves to defend those we had selected, we discovered to our pleasant surprise that the same name headed our individual lists. This made the task of selecting the final winner very simple. Of course, we had in our initial meetings drawn up a list of rough criteria that we would adopt when looking at individual entries. We gave preference to reportage, the more granular the better, over those that mixed opinion and reportage. As members of the jury, we were extremely pleased to receive many superlative entries, which made our task that much more enjoyable. But equally, we were struck by the fact that barring a few, a majority of the entries that made it to the short list were from the digital rather than the legacy media. I would like to add that this award in earlier years was among the few, or perhaps the only award for which journalists were not required to apply. The jury selected them. Now that is not possible because of the huge presence of the digital and alternative media, which is doing such excellent work. For Seema, Mustafa, and me, both past winners of this very award, this is a special moment. As I stand here, it gives me great pleasure and joy to announce the winner of this year's award. The Prem Bhatia Award for Excellence in Political Journalism for 2026 goes to Akanksha Kumar for her exceptional journalism and dedicated commitment to public interest reporting. Unlike those satisfied with sporadic coverage of isolated events, Akanksha has built a vital, interconnected body of work that directly fulfills the foundational mission of this award. She documents communalism by analyzing the administrative, legal, and media ecosystems that foster discrimination, moving public understanding far beyond mere episodes of violence. She examines the exercise of state power through critical, on-the-ground investigations into police encounters in Uttar Pradesh, the invocation of the Unlawful Activities Prevention Act in Haryana, and the enforcement of anti-conversion laws in Rajasthan. By creating an accurate public record, she ensures that the voices of affected citizens remain central to the democratic conversation. At a time when democratic institutions face unprecedented contestation, Akanksha's work exemplifies journalism's highest purpose, holding authority to informed scrutiny and protecting the truth. Akanksha Kumar, I'm happy to say, was a unanimous choice of all 3 members of the jury. Congratulations, Akanksha. Akanksha, would you like to say a few words?
Good evening, esteemed guests present in the House. First and foremost, I would like to thank the jury and the members of the Editors Guild of India for acknowledging my work, which focused on police encounters in Uttar Pradesh, alleged misuse of UAPA in Haryana's Nuh violence case, the pattern of systemic violence witnessed during prayer meetings by Christians across Rajasthan that laid the groundwork for the state's anti-conversion law, and the havoc wreaked by a Bajrang Dal worker during a birthday party in UP's Bareilly, where Muslim friends of the birthday girl were targeted because of their religious identity. I concur with senior journalist Srinivasan Jain, who said at the Media Rumble last year, "These are extraordinary times. If you are a journalist, when you are actually watching your country slide into a majoritarian autocracy, this is the biggest story you will ever cover in your lifetime." As a mid-career journalist, a caveat I would like to add to that is that these are also the worst of times, especially if you stick to the traditional old school style of asking questions of the government and its investigating agencies. These are also the worst of times when you will be targeted for playing this very adversarial role. In 2022, I received a notice from the UP STF concerning an investigative piece I had filed on the STF's role in the UAPA case against journalist Siddique Kapan. Around the same time, some right-wing propaganda websites carried articles labeling me as someone who supported a terrorist. In 2023, after a series was published exposing loopholes in Uttar Pradesh's anti-conversion law, particularly Section 4, which defined who the victim is supposed to be, and documented how Hindutva groups were allegedly misusing the law, I learned that personnel from the LIU, Local Intelligence Unit, had been making inquiries about me through one of my sources. And in November 2025, after my reporting on UAPA charges being slapped against Muslim men in Haryana's Nuh and on police encounters in Uttar Pradesh, received the HRRFJ Human Rights and Religious Freedom Journalism Award, a member of the ruling party wrote to the National Human Rights Commission, naming me along with some fellow journalists as people who needed to be, quote-unquote, investigated for presenting a distorted image of Muslims in India. As journalists, we are often accused of suffering from a God complex, but I do think it's important to share the rather unusual circumstances under which we are able to bring out reportage that documents the state of minorities and marginalized sections, often at the receiving end of the state and the police. For some of us, tracking communalism and human rights violations regularly for the last couple of years, every single byline brings with it a sense of paranoia for our families on the personal front, who constantly worry about our safety. Not to forget the toll it has taken on our mental health as well, for merely tracking hate in the last decade, both online and in the field. Having gone through 5,000 pages of the charge sheet in Siddique Kapan's case in 2021 and in 2026 as part of my work at The Wire, making sense of around 300 pages of documents submitted by Noida police regarding approval for NSA in the case of journalist Satyam Verma, I do want to tell journalists who have faced prison term simply for doing their job, we remember all of you today. And to stringers in small towns who often ditch the opportunity of sharing a byline despite having information critical of powers that be, I do hope you continue to keep up the good fight of safeguarding democratic principles. To the women and men who shared their accounts with me, I am truly humbled by your warmth and trust, and forever grateful to you. Finally, I'm extremely grateful to independent platforms like News Laundry and its editorial team, Manisha Pandey, Atul Chaurasia, and Abhinandan Sekri, for giving space to stories I believed needed to be told, and for helping me understand why it's equally important to look inwards and question those within our own fraternity who dish out a scripted agenda on a daily basis. For a small towner like me from Allahabad, newsrooms in Delhi have been absolute democratic spaces which have molded me from a rookie reporter ever since I began my career in 2013. I hope to keep up the good fight and always be on the right side of the truth in the years ahead. Thank you.